Everyone's attention, and when we assemble for our town hall meeting on what has come to be known as the fire tax. We've got a very fine crowd tonight. I'm Senator Jim Nielsen. I'm privileged to represent 12 Northern California counties, and now during my various years I've represented 19 different California counties. This particular district, the 4th Senate District, extends from Auburn to Crescent City and a whole lot in between. We're going to have a informative evening tonight talking about this tax, its evolution, its content, and hopefully some thoughts of what those who would like to see it be a little bit different, what we can do about it. I want to thank Bob Schofield for the hospitality here tonight and all of the presenters who've shown up. I'd like to start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. We still need to do that, even though some of my colleagues in Sacramento want to take "under God" out of the pledge. We're going to do it right here tonight, right? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to move along with dispatch tonight, and we have an esteemed group of participants. Congressman LaMalfa will be here shortly and be participating in our event tonight. Also, Jim Dahl, he represents George Runner, member of the State Board of Equalization that covers this vast area. And Senator Runner formerly served in the state legislature, a good friend of mine, and now he's your Board of Equalization member from up here. And Senator Runner is a critic of the fire tax, and Mr. Dahl will have a few things to say. We also have your supervisor, Doug Teeter. He's going to be a part of this tonight. Doug, thank you for being here, and thank you for your hospitality in your district.
Yeah.
We have another supervisor from an adjacent county. Mr. James Gallagher is a Sutter County supervisor. And Supervisor Gallagher has long been engaged in this debate as a county supervisor in counties that are affected by this tax. And he's what I'd call on our side on this deal. And also, very specially, Mr. David Wolf. David is right here. He is the legislative director for Howard Jarvis Taxpayers.
All right. Yeah.
And Howard Jarvis Taxpayers, ladies and gentlemen, in this fight are your best friends.
Yes.
And we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm going to have just a few introductory remarks, kind of an overview of the history of this infamous tax. Then we're going to ask David Wolf to give you an update on the Jarvis lawsuit and some of the things that you can do to be helpful in the success of that very important lawsuit. Supervisor Teeter then is going to give his perspectives on this issue, of many issues that are of your concern. Congressman LaMalfa by then should be here. He will offer his remarks. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Dahl, on behalf of Board of Equalization member Runner, have a few remarks. Then we're going to have about 25 minutes of questions, and for those questions we'd ask that you come up to the microphone, state your question quickly and succinctly, and we'll kind of delegate it among us as to who will answer that question. Maybe a couple of us would like a poke at it, but we want to be expeditious and get everybody out of here around 7:45. The SRA fee proposal, in my opinion, and it's a learned opinion, it's not a casual one, it's from the inside, is a product of individuals in state government wanting to achieve more money for government. In this case, money to supplant through your taxes the general fund monies that had formerly provided such things as fire prevention for CAL FIRE. Now it will come from another source. Now, some of the specious arguments about this over the years have been, you who live in state responsibility areas should pay more because there are more fires where you live, and you chose to live there. Well, I've had some fun with my legislative colleagues saying, well, you chose to live in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and you have earthquakes. So why would we want to pay our taxes to fix your cities? It's the same dang logic, folks, but that's the rationale here, okay? And you'll still hear people saying, well, they live in the areas, and that's why they should pay more. The advent of this fee, as I say, it was introduced and defeated a couple of times. When it finally became a reality 3 years ago, the budget process was at its conclusion. This fee was stuck in at the last moment, in the dark of night, meaning behind closed doors, without any open hearing of the public for you or anyone else to even know about it or come and say, I like it or I don't like it. Not even legislators knew, and no legislators had occasion to sit in committee and deliberate on this provision that has affected so many of all of us. Dark of night. Some of us put up a valiant battle. We even had some members that voted no of a party that was generally in sympathy with taxes because a lot of their constituents did not like it, but it did pass. And Governor Brown quickly signed it because it did what he wanted to get more money for government. Then there was a follow-up bill that expanded the application of the fee and raised it. That bill, lo and behold, was defeated. So what then happened? The governor reconstituted the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection with his own people. They, by regulation, put into effect the fee you're dealing with now that the legislature had, the increase on it at least, and the broadening of the application was defeated. That's the story of how this train got here. It's certainly not a very pleasant thing. This year, there's a proposed 13.4 million increase and an expansion in this year's budget of the definition of the state's responsibility area to be expanded to include areas that would threaten the SRAs. Okay, what does that mean? How far from the boundary of the current SRA does that mean? How far does would threaten? In government language, folks, that means as far as we in government want to go. The bureaucrats or the administration. That's the broadest construction you could possibly have, and I'm not an attorney. But that's the deal. Also, it's interesting, you know, you have sunsets in taxes once in a while, and now we're in the era of rolling sunsets, meaning it keeps going. A 3-year sunset, a 3-year sunset becomes a 7-year sunset, becomes a permanent sunset, and goes on and on and on. Well, this fire tax has an automatic escalator. Nobody even votes. It's more complicated than the CPI, but it's already indexed to rise every year. Why? So you would get more service? No. So government will get more money, because that is what it's all about. I've used many examples to say that what I alleged in my first debates on this years ago have been proven conclusively and irrefutably true. For example, the budget funds $90 million that is collected annually, and so far has spent $50 million for various purposes. How much fire prevention has been going on up here of late? I think not very much. And that's one of our problems, folks. So we complain and we fight back. We have now found that the CAL FIRE has redirected substantial amounts of this money to do what? Collect more money. And I have raised a big fuss this year in the budget. Now, I'm not being critical of people in CAL FIRE. There are a lot of wonderful, wonderful people. and I'll never criticize them. Even Director Pimlott is a good friend of mine. And he's taking a rough beat because his orders are coming on from on high. And he's doing what he must as the director of that department to administer what others insist that he must do. But they've really been doing some very bad things with it. Creating these little pots of money that I think are also illegal. And then using them as they would see fit to use them. Of great interest, week before last, I'm on the budget committee, have been all my years in the legislature this time around. And I had legislative counsel in committee. Director Pimlott was testifying. And I asked the legislative counsel, one Mr. Josh Tierney, whether the SRA fees could be used for the purpose of the Civil Cost Recovery Program, meaning used to collect more taxes, and in this case, the Civil Cost Recovery is a fund set up so that you, a landowner, can be sued by the state to deem you responsible before the fire and cost you hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in some cases. And he said, no, that's not legal. And he cited the government code section. And everybody in the department was very uncomfortable. And some of my colleagues on the budget committee were very uncomfortable to have the Ledge Council come testify that was illegal. Mr. Wolf will be telling you about some other aspects of this onerous fire tax that is illegal. I see Congressman LaMalfa has come in. Doug, please come join us. Your congressman, our friend, Doug. Welcome, Congressman. All right. What we're going to do now, folks, the agenda, as I think I've just gone through it, and then when we get to the questions and answers, if you wish to ask a question, come up to the microphone. Be polite and stand in line, and then we will recognize you for your comments. Or your questions particularly. There's a lot of literature in the back that that is available to you. Many of you collected it already. I will have some concluding remarks, but I would hope that you would go out of here with some confidence, more knowledge about this fire tax and what you can do as far as your own opinions about that fire tax. And with that said, let me introduce to you Mr. David Wolf, a real valiant warrior on your behalf, folks. I see him in the long hours of day and night down there representing Howard Jarvis taxpayers and you, a voice in the wilderness for fiscal responsibility and good stewardship of your taxes. Mr. David Wolf.
Jim, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's good to see all you guys tonight, and this is really an important and a serious issue. As Jim mentioned, my name is David Wolf. I'm the Legislative Director at the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We do have materials in the back, before I forget, brochures and our quarterly newsletter that comes out, so if you didn't get that coming in, definitely take it going out, or otherwise I have to take it back home with me. And I don't like doing that. So. The fire tax is an egregious thing, ladies and gentlemen, and we are heading up the efforts to defeat it. We have filed a class action lawsuit in the Superior Court system in order to attempt to defeat it, and I will update all of you as to how that process is going. But first, let's go back and just discuss why we're here. As Jim mentioned, this was passed illegally as part of the 2011 budget cycle on a majority vote. We believe this is a special tax and not a fee under the provisions of Prop 26, which was approved by voters back in 2010. Prop 26 states that any change in state statute that leads to any taxpayer paying a higher tax requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature. Prop 26 also lists 4 definitions of what is an appropriate fee. One of those definitions is a direct benefit to the fee payer, not provided those not charged. And that was sort of the nexus that the legislature used in order to attempt to make this a legitimate fee. However, there is not a direct nexus back to the individuals paying this fee, and this is something that we do highlight in our lawsuit. This was approved on a 2/3 vote. Again, we do believe it required a 2/3 vote. Since it didn't get one, we filed a lawsuit. This is a class action lawsuit. Everyone in the lawsuit who has filled out a petition for redetermination and has paid their bills within 30 days is eligible to participate in the lawsuit and to get their money back in the event that we win the case, which we certainly hope to. However, we do have 12 main plaintiffs in the lawsuit, and these plaintiffs were specifically picked in order to highlight the fact that there is no nexus between the individuals paying the fee and what the money is going for. Let me give you an example. One of our plaintiffs is a gentleman who lives in the middle of the desert, 400 miles away from the nearest Cal Fire station, surrounded by sand and scrub, living in a mobile home park, and yet he has to pay the Cal Fire fee. There is an individual living next to Thunder Valley Casino up in the El Dorado area. They have to pay the fee. The casino next door does not. So explain to me how that makes sense. So again, the question of direct benefit is going to be the key one in the lawsuit. And again, we think we've identified plaintiffs by which we can make this argument very, very effectively. So that's kind of an update on the lawsuit. Everybody has been served. CAL FIRE was served with the lawsuit in February after some delays. And we have amended the complaint in order to reference things I think Jim mentioned regarding the using of the money for investigations and other purposes, which both the legislative analyst and Ledge Counsel has come out and said is patently unconstitutional. So what the governor did in January by instituting that actually makes our case even easier, we would argue. So we've amended our complaint to include that. Everybody has been served, and now it's just a question of getting a court date set and getting this started. I have no idea when that is going to be. We do believe the case will be heard at some point this year, and hopefully addressed and figured out at some point this year as well. So it's kind of just an issue of being patient and just waiting for the law to take its course, but things are certainly moving forward on that front. If you would like updates on the fire fee, updates on our lawsuit, we do have a website set up, firetaxprotest.org. Again, firetaxprotest.org. We do have an email list that's associated with that website, and you can certainly sign up for email updates. We don't bombard you, we only send out things as it pertains to the lawsuit. So once every 10 days to 2 weeks or so, we'll send out email updates. And it's just a good way to keep abreast of what's going on. If you don't have internet access, I'll hand out my phone number here, which is 916-444-9950. All you guys are certainly more than happy to call at any time to get updates and just see what's going on with this. And let me just say too, the first round of mailings to the counties have been completed. They were mailing out to the counties in alphabetical order, and they finished that towards the end of last year. They were supposed to begin this month mailing the second round of bills for the current fiscal year, and that has been suspended temporarily because both CAL FIRE and the BOE have realized they have all sorts of administrative hurdles in terms of trying to collect this money. It's not going smoothly. In fact, they've spent about 70% of what they've taken in already, roughly, in administrative costs. So this is not a moneymaker for them by any stretch of the imagination. They may say the intent is to go out and try and get more revenue, but it's simply not the case, and it's not going to work with this. So all that to say, there's been all sorts of hurdles in trying to get the money, so they've suspended the second round of mailings. However, we do imagine that will start sooner rather than later, because again, they do want to collect that money. And all I would say in regards to that is, if you filled out a petition for redetermination in the first round of bills and you did it and paid your bill within 30 days, our attorneys have said you do not need to fill out the form again. However, you do still need to pay your bill within 30 days. so you don't get hit with fines and penalties that could total up to 20% a month, every month, until you pay the bill. If you haven't paid your first round of bill yet, totally pay that, please, because there is no recourse for the fines and penalties that are already being thrown against you. And if you go long enough without paying it, the state can, in fact, legally place a lien against your property. So we would encourage you to pay that sooner rather than later. Jim, is there anything else you want me to mention? Okay. Actually, let me just really quickly give a legislative update too, since I am the legislative director with the association. There have been some bills that have come up this year pertaining to the fire tax. Senator Gaines has introduced a bill, SB 17, to repeal the fire tax. Assembly members Mike Morrell and Tim Donnelly have also introduced bills to repeal the fire tax. Those bills actually got out of their first policy committee with bipartisan support. So that is good news. There are individuals on both sides of the aisle that are paying attention to this in a way that they haven't paid attention to it before. And I think if this ever did actually come up for a vote, there would be Democrats who would vote aye to repeal it. So that is good news. Your activism is paying dividends, and Jim mentioned, things to discuss in terms of getting the word out for various folks, and that would be what I would recommend, is just continue to work to get the word out in the media, work to get the word out among your friends, work to get the word out in the legislature, because let's be honest in terms of what this really is. This is a double tax. This is a double tax. Most of you, if not all of you, already pay a special assessment for fire service, and that's legitimate. You get a direct benefit and an actual service. How much, who knows, but you actually get a direct benefit off of that special assessment. The same cannot be said for this fire tax because it just patches a $50 million hole in the general fund, as Jim mentioned. So, again, that is kind of the thrust of our lawsuit. One other bill that's worth mentioning that just came out, and I don't think will be heard this year, but it is out there, is AB 468, which is a bill by Assemblyman Wes Chesbrough. We're affectionately calling this bill Fire Tax 2.0. And it's cute. I didn't actually come up with that, but we're calling it Fire Tax 2.0. And what this does, it actually repeals the fire tax, which is good, I suppose, except it replaces it with a 4.8% insurance surcharge on all residential and commercial properties across the state. So, what's concerning about this is that it's being tagged in the legislature as a majority vote. Now, Legislative Council in their wisdom, I think, has said, since we're substituting one tax for another, it's revenue neutral and it balances out. Unfortunately, that flies in the face of Prop 26, which again says any change in state statute that leads to any taxpayer, paying a higher tax, requires a 2/3 vote. So we do believe this bill as well also requires a 2/3 vote, and if that moves forward, we'll be opposing that just as strongly as we have the fire tax. So that's kind of a legislative update for you, and if you have any questions later, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Well, folks, don't get too excited. Yes, there's a long way to go, and the bills that have moved, numbers of them have been defeated already, and the bills that are moving, well, let's just say they will not prevail in my opinion. We need to fight the good fight. But I'll tell you, the repeal bill, I've carried it the last 2 years with Assemblyman Jeffries along with Senator LaMalfa. This year I couldn't be the lead author because I wasn't in the legislature till January. But I joined on as a joint author with Senator Gaines. But whatever passes committee now will go to what's called the Appropriations Committee. And it will die in the dark of night on something called the suspense calendar. Now, I hate that I be that prophet, and if somebody want to get a little of the arcane, then let's talk afterwards. I won't bore you now. But anything that takes money away from government right now will not pass this legislature. And the so-called Chesbrough bill, and I like Wes Chesbrough very much, but you know, eliminating one tax and replacing it with another tax is still about tax, it's still about more money for government, and does not solve any of the problems created by that infamous Fire P. If I may now, your supervisor, Mr. Doug Teeter.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Nielsen, for having me here. It's a pleasure to see my constituents. This is my area. And I'm going to go on to a kind of a little different tack because I think we understand that the fire tax is what it is. I don't like the inequality. I live in Paradise. I don't pay the fire tax. But my constituents up here in Magalia and the other outlying areas that are in the unincorporated county do. And I see the Magalia area having a fire station, having hydrants. I see it basically the same as Paradise. And I don't get why Magalia is in it and Paradise isn't. So it's an inequality issue as well as, you know, it's not the will of the voters. If I may query the crowd and see if I can get some audience participation, how many people here are from Magalia? A good chunk of them. Paradise. Okay, nicely represented. Other areas outside Paradise, Magalia. Okay, thank you for coming. How many have had their home insurance dropped recently? Couple, okay, I think I saw four hands out there. How many have had their home insurance premium increased? Quite a few, okay. So that was kind of, you know, bringing it to the local area. That's been a common theme, not a big theme. I think sheriff has been a bigger theme, the coverage up here in Magalia, and we're going to get to that at my town hall on May 14th. But nevertheless, people have called and said their insurance is canceled. And the unfortunate part is they never bring the cancellation notice to me so I can really find out why. But I kind of nosed around. I feel this job is kind of like an investigative reporter, and I get to nose around and find out the reasons. And I called insurance agents because it seemed like Allstate and Alliance were a common theme. And yes, Allstate, I called Allstate, I called Farmers, I called Nevin and Witt, a broker, and Allstate is pulled out or has completely pulled out all their insurance policies here. Farmers, which I have, is not out completely, but I've heard they have canceled some. I expect a 22% increase this year, and I'll get to why in a minute. Nevin Witt told me 13 people came to them due to canceled home insurance. And as you all know, if you can't get home insurance, your property is going to be hard to sell because a bank won't give you a loan. So where this went is Allstate agent told me that they now offer insurance through Travelers, Allied, and Northlight. Nevin and Witt offers insurance through California Capital Insurance Company. You can always get insurance through Lloyd's, but I've heard it's very expensive. And then there's a California option that's, I think, even more expensive. And hopefully Farmers still sticks around. The theme has been on why is a private company called ISO, and I left a handout. I don't know if I brought enough, but who is ISO? ISO is the Insurance Services Office, is a for-profit monopoly that is authorized by your state legislature or Department of Insurance since about 1916. What is it used for? ISO is used to rate community fire defenses and sell the data to the insurance industry for the purposes of establishing insurance rates. Virtually every insurance carrier uses this one company. The ratings take place about every 10 to 15 years. The changes in district, or they audit, and a change in district boundary, station locations, automatic aid agreements, apparatus, all kinds of things figure into that audit. A community can improve theirs if they show they've changed something. And so what are the four factors? It's a review of the communications and dispatch facilities, a review of the water system and supplies, a review of the fire department, and a community-wide grade is also established. And so they have 10 classes. Paradise is a class 3, meaning they have like 70 to 70 or 80% of what ISO thinks a fire community or a community should have. Magalia, I believe, is 4. And, again, why is Magalia that much different than Paradise? To me, it seems pretty similar. And I was told it was around the water. So that's ISO. The non-pressurized water areas, for those that you don't live in Magalia or Paradise, you are a 10. And a 10 means committees receive an ISO Class 10 rating when they do not meet ISO's minimum standards. This means the community lacks the adequate dispatch center, fire department, and water supply to handle any major blazes. So, it used to be an 8B. And I asked an insurance agent, what happened when it went from 8B to 10? Well, they didn't have examples because, unfortunately, ISO's ratings are kind of proprietary, and they don't really share it with the fire department. So I have to ask the insurance agent. The insurance agent doesn't have like a list of when things change, so they have to do by memory of when they had a client with 8B, and they went to a 9. 150% increase. Not all of that was price, so it was through the years, but a bulk of it. So imagine what it happened to going to 10. And imagine, Paradise for sure, they have severe budget problems. They may lose their 3 and go to a 4. So this ISO's a big problem to me. And it doesn't stop with just that 1 to 10 scale. They've created a fire line scale now. And that's what's causing my insurance to go up 22%. So now they map out what they think are the heavy brush areas. And one of the firefighters told me he got a high brush score, and you could Google his property and it's clear all the way around. And so, again, there's kind of this, yes. Senator Nielsen said the FEMA principle. So my question is, and I've only been in office 4 months, and this is kind of the things I like to do is to dig in and then hopefully be able to shift this over to our state representatives, and hopefully they'll take on the investigation. But is ISO serving California's interest? CAL FIRE, as I mentioned, used to be 8B in the county, is now 10. And the reasons why is, let's see, we have 42 stations in Butte County. ISO does not recognize 21 of them. 8 are what are called Amador stations. And an Amador station is a CAL FIRE station that the county pays extra money to keep it open year-round. Sterling City has a CAL FIRE Amador station open 24/7, 365. It wasn't counted. The volunteer station in town, that counts. And so there's this inequality. It makes no sense. I was told that ISO requires a hose clamp be on an engine in case a hose bursts. Well, hoses don't burst like a zipper anymore and just rip open. They just sprout a leak. So you don't even need a hose clamp per CAL FIRE. So now they require that on the fire truck even though it's not even needed. The other thing, ladders were 4 feet too short, and that's why some of these CAL FIRE engines weren't counted. Pump ratings were not tagged on the engine like with a little metal plate. They're actually recorded in a book at CAL FIRE station and had testing done to prove what the pump rate was. Well, that wasn't good enough for ISO, so that engine doesn't count. A deduction was made for fire station phone numbers in the phone book. ISO just wanted 911. They didn't want people calling individual fire stations. So those are the kinds of things that I don't think ISO is serving California's interests. ISO does not seem to understand mutual aid agreements. If there's a fire in Magalia, trucks come from Sterling City possibly, trucks come from Paradise. They don't seem, at least from CAL FIRE's perspective, that is an addition to the area. Also, when CAL FIRE appealed the loss of the 8B rating to the 10, it took ISO 6 months to respond. And when you're basically given a monopoly, I think you should probably act a little faster. And maybe that's one reason they recently changed hands. And I was told that they're going to be redoing their studies, and hopefully we can get back to a better rating. So, is Also, ISO is that not serving California's interest, but is California also not benefiting our communities? I feel that it's not when a volunteer fire department in Fallon, Nevada is rated ISO #1. That volunteer fire department beat out Paradise, beat out Magalia. What did they get? I imagine they got a lot of brand new equipment. People probably said, hey, let's use our tax dollars, and voted to buy new stuff, and that boosted their rating. Thank you. I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm concluding shortly. And I think if the people voted on this, they would have directed that I want, improved CAL FIRE apparatus, not some vague idea of where this money is going to go. I feel we need a bridge over Doe Mill Road to handle fire truck weights. It doesn't handle fire trucks right now, and that's a shorter route than the route through 171 through Butte Meadows. So that would make sense, and hopefully our federal legislatures will help us get that bridge going. We need equipment to improve our ISO ratings. We need improvements to volunteer stations and possibly onerous training procedures that are keeping people from volunteering. Because if volunteer stations are fully staffed, like Cherokee was included, and it's hard to get people to volunteer, especially when they have to do like 24 hours of training to become a volunteer, and that is something I think we need to improve on. We need support for improved public safety, obviously, and we need California to stop raiding local revenues. And I appreciate being here in front of you, and thank you for your time.
Let's give it to Congressman LaMalpa.
You done.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me up here with you all here. It's great to be on this panel. Sorry I was a few minutes late. Was exchanging daughters with my wife on the way up here as it goes here. So we still have those domestic things to deal with at home. God bless them, yes. So, but what a great group. I'm glad so many people turned out here tonight on this topic, or for any topic. We need public participation on what government does and what it should be doing. I see a good friend back here, Darrell Wilson from the Butte Fire State Council here. How many years have you been on that, Darrell?
What year is it now?
You've been around a long time in fire suppression and fire
12
safety.
years.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Darrell. Glad you're here. So, listening to the different comments here, and David Wolf, who has been a long-time advocate for getting the taxpayers at least what they expect for their tax dollars at a fair rate. Senator Nielsen, who we work very closely with, our office and his. Doug Teeter here, who we're getting to know, and I'm only 4 months in this office too. But look forward to working with you on that, and I was impressed with your, how up on this insurance bid you are. But I was troubled though. Now back, I don't know, I guess it's been 30 years now already. Being a 10 was a good thing. You remember Bo Derek? And
Yeah.
you were a 10. So here we are in government. Here we can't even get that right. So yes. So yeah, that was for you, James. But so we got a lot to do with the different levels of government. Federally, in the Congress, I sit on 2 committees there. The Agricultural Committee and the Natural Resources Committee. And Resources is one that I've been working at all my years in the state legislature, in the Assembly, in the state Senate, as well as now in the U.S. House. And what is that reason? One of the primary reasons I constantly think of even referred to in speeches, even in an area where there is no trees, is the trees. I drove up here this evening, and I see a lot of areas that are still overforested, that are not probably being allowed to manage, whether we're talking government-owned land or the inability for people to do things on their private land because of the burdensome and cumbersome timber harvest plan process that we have here in California. So in other states like Oregon, if you want to do some tree harvest, some thinning, some things that you think are responsible with your property, or try to do that on government lands with the proper leases and permits and such. In Oregon, you can probably get it done with a document a couple of pages thick. other state. California, it's a document about this thick. It takes about a year and about $50,000 to produce. Therefore, if you're a small landowner, you're not going to have the wherewithal to do that. You're not going to make the effort because it's just not worth it. You would rather perhaps develop that piece of property or just leave it be. And that's part of the danger we have. So what should we be doing? We should be having a much more proactive forest management, timber harvest process in California now, and really all the western states, since I'm governing at a different level here. You know, we can watch it burn or we can manage it. And so many good things come from the management of it, is that you have a local economy, like we used to have. You have healthier forests because they're not over thick by competing for a limited water supply. You may not think of it, but those trees are competing for that groundwater supply that's there too. When the trees are stressed, they quit, as their national mechanism of defense, they quit putting out as much sap. Sap is that mechanism that helps them beat back insects. And insects know it. So they come in there and start drilling on the trees, they kill the trees, and pretty much you have like what you had with Lake Arrowhead down south some years ago, which burned really bad. That can happen anywhere due to poor management. And why is that? It's not that we don't have people out there eager to do it. It's onerous regulations coming out of the wisdom of the state capitol in Sacramento, as well as some of the things coming out of Washington, D.C. Jim gets it. He's working on it. I took a stab at it in the state legislature. We were successful with some legislation to kind of open the door to easier timber harvest. It didn't require quite so burdensome of the timber harvest plan process. But what do we do? What do we get now? In my final year in the state legislature, because of that onerous process, in addition to the fire tax you pay, something new came along, a lumber tax. 1% on all wood products that are sold at retail level. Now, that's just as bad to figure out as trying to figure out a board of equalization of which piece of property, because they're not just using simple parcels like you would have at the county level. They had to create their own. They had to have some kind of a dwelling or something that could be a dwelling. I don't know if that counts chicken coops or not, or this or that, or the doghouse that your wife might send you out to if you're watching too much ESPN. But you know, so there's eligibility that is still being determined, still being written. And I thought it was just an awesome statistic that David Wolf just said a while ago, that 70% of it so far of what they're generating for, was it 2 budget years ago that they're backfilling? Now they've got to do this, the current budget year, and then they got to jump ahead to the next budget year when they start maybe this fall or something.
If they stick with the time frame that they need to.
If they stick with the time frame that already is being delayed. This thing reminds me of high-speed rail and Obamacare. I mean, this is the Obamacare of fire funding. Really? You know, and I don't mean to step on some other issues there, but by golly, why do we turn more responsibility over to people who don't have any idea how to handle it? I mean, if you want to raise taxes, just come out right in front of everybody and say, let's do it, you know, and raise everybody's sales tax, raise everybody's something else. But these little tricky mechanisms we're trying to do are unwieldy, and as David said, 70% of it is actually being lost due to the bureaucracy of putting it in place. That's shameful. Beyond how shameful it was that they tried to call it just a simple majority vote when we were there battling this a couple of years ago. Now, Prop 26, as the lawsuit is working at, developing, there's a very excellent chance it will be overturned under the Prop 26 constitutional amendment. So that's a good thing. So that's why Mr. Chesbrough on the coast there, these guys, and that's why they can actually move a bill like this committee. Ordinarily, that wouldn't happen with the makeup of the legislature down there. They're moving it because they know that it's an embarrassing thing. They know it isn't going to work. So the Chesbrough bill, like, okay, let's get rid of this thing. Let's just put it behind us, and we'll come out with a new mechanism. Here, Rob. Make a little ice cream out of that, maybe it sounds like it. Higher on the mic, thank you, okay. I don't know. Hey, we're just having fun, are we? So, it's a little bit comical in a way that they know it's not going to work. Board of Equalization, your representative on the BOE, George Runner, has written many articles on how this thing cannot work, and so, they have to backtrack and find a different mechanism. Or, to begin with, maybe you and us as taxpayers, they could actually lead the funding where it was supposed to be to begin with. Because government is supposed to be providing basic services such as public safety, such as fire suppression, such as cops on our street, things like that, and a whole lot of things like high-speed rail, which I regularly kick when it's down every chance I can get.
It's down.
$100 billion for high-speed rail that we don't have any of the private funding for, but I won't get on that. But that's why you should be insulted. So it was mentioned here this double taxation. I would submit it's probably triple taxation. Because many of you that live in a fire district where your community came together, decided, look, we want to enhance what we have in our local, maybe very rural, very far up the Pike area. We come together as a community, we'll self-assess a little extra on our property, on our homes, in order to bolster our own fire district. And that's admirable. It's a community making that decision together. So you're paying that. You're paying already your normal taxes you're paying. And then the state of California and the legislature slaps you in the face with this additional fire fee. That sounds like triple taxation. One of them is maybe voluntary, one is semi-voluntary, and one is just actually illegal. And that's why David's going to do the good work and please take his literature on the way out. He does great work for us. And so this is that turning point because of Prop 26. And so the legislature, being embarrassed as they are, they would like to backtrack and cover over on this thing. But on the preventative side, and this is an area we can engage here in Washington, D.C. I mentioned I'm a member of the Resources Committee. We're working on legislation right now that's House Resolution number 1526, which Resources Committee Chairman Doc Hastings is authoring and I'm a co-sponsor on, which, and this is good stuff here, requires the National Forest to harvest at least 50% of the sustainable yield, the amount of timber that can be harvested each year. Requires them to do it. Finally, they need to perform. Okay? Talk about taxation without representation. We're talking taxation without performance. We want at the federal level for U.S. Forest Service to be much more aggressive about actually managing the forest. And so where you have federal lands around here, we have the opportunity to have them not be part of the tinderbox that maybe sweeps through this whole area. We think that's extremely important. Now, what Supervisor Teeter would like to also hear about is that county governments would receive 25% of the U.S. forest proceeds from these harvests to fund schools, roads, and other measures. So what we have right now is something called the Secure Rural Schools, where they've taken away the timber industry. Now we have to backfill the dollars out of the Treasury. Yes, sir. Dollars have to be taken out of the Treasury to backfill what used to be produced by working people in the timber industry. So Secure Rural Schools is something that we'll continue to battle for and keep in place, but wouldn't it be better to have an economy that those dollars come in by people producing, local people, with jobs, with prospects for their kids to grow up and still live in this community, work in the lumber mills, work in the forest, build the lumber mills. That said, all these things work together for us to have stronger, safer rural communities. It will also limit the lawsuits by requiring plaintiffs to put up a bond before suing, ensuring that environmental groups can't simply file endless amounts of paperwork to stall projects. Now this is what happens a lot after you have had a fire and you would like to be able to go in and salvage the land. Now, when you see it on private property where they have a little easier time of doing that, they're back in there getting that salvageable timber out within a year, while the wood still has value, doesn't get the bugs in it and the bluing in it and all that stuff. They're making something out of it. Then they're recovering the property, cleaning it up, and getting it planted back. You can fly over a fire area like 5 to 7 years later, and you can tell by the checkerboard pattern where the private property is, the people that have a vested interest and are good stewards of the land. The next checkerboard over, where it's federal land, they haven't done anything. So that's why, as a part of one of these provisions we're working on too, we will be, I've submitted a request that the 2014 budget contain No more money for land acquisition, okay? Why is the federal government acquiring more land when they can't take care of the parks they have now? National Park Service, their methodology of taking care of our parks and fire is just to let it burn. They think that's a cleansing way to do things. Like, well, we have too many years of Smokey the Bear putting the fires out and not the management, so when we have a let it burns everything down to a moonscape. It isn't like the old-fashioned way where the occasional lightning fires would burn along the bottom of the forest, the big trees with their thick bark would withstand that. No. So we're going to have to be part of the equation. Mankind is part of the equation. So we think that that money going to buy more land or seize more land or run people out of their property, whether it's farming, ranching, or timber, because of onerous regulations and the lawsuits that the U.S. attorneys are bringing upon people because someone may have accidentally started a fire over here that gets on their mismanaged land. It's just unbelievable, the attitude of government these days. And, in a nod towards Mr. Teeter as well, a moratorium being placed on additional closures of roads and trails within the federal limits. These are your lands. It's not theirs. It's all of ours. And so having it gated off, cut off, closed off from us to enjoy for recreation, for hiking, and for the occasional timber harvest that can take place. You know, they're closing roads, they're eliminating roads, they're taking them out. To get a culvert put in place, it takes an act of Congress. And we can't even act that way. Just to get a culvert put in. It's amazing how the mismanagement, the bad stewardship of this land. So we are fighting that they cannot place a moratorium on this access because it's critical that people be part of the equation for the management and the enjoyment of your land, for recreation, etc., where appropriate. So all these things added together will give us a better managed forest system. We'll have a better income to our local communities, to our local government here. And with this income, they're not so desperate to come after everybody for any taxable reason they can think of. They make it up as they go. The fire tax, the lumber tax. They want to bring the car tax back up and triple that so your automobile goes from maybe $200 a year to $600 a year. They're thinking about that now. All these little death by 1,000 cut things because they don't really want to maybe keep you on the income tax as middle income folks. They'll just hit the people, you know, at the upper level, or they hit cigarette smokers or people out that they just deem bad. So it's a constant battle here. So again, I'm very appreciative that you're all out here tonight to support this common effort here to be informed on the fire tax and everything this government is doing, and be part of this team, be part of this group of warriors that we have to carry this message back to Sacramento and to Washington, D.C. So I appreciate it greatly. I thank David Wolf for making the trek. I thank Senator Nielsen for allowing me to be able to stand in here tonight and working with our local representative, Supervisor Teeter, and the great job he's doing. So, you know, all this red here, California is not a red state. We're bathing rural California in red ink due to these practices. And it's just atrocious that we as rural people are being subjected to this, because we know better how to be stewards of our land than somebody from Santa Monica or San Francisco. So with that, thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. Look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Let me allow just for a bit Mr. Jim Dahl, who represents our Board of Equalization member, Senator George Runner.
Good evening. Try that one more time. Good evening. Yes. Well, it is a privilege to be here. I represent Senator Runner, former senator. He worked with these young men up here, along with his wife Sharon, and they send their regards. And it really is a privilege. I've only been with the Board of Equalization a year and a couple months. And I came to the board, I came out of retirement. I live in Reading, and so I paid this fee, illegal tax, a couple months ago, like you all. And I came to the board actually because I wanted to represent Senator Runner. He is our representative for the board. Interesting thing about the Board of Equalization, we are the only elected tax board in the United States. And so we have 4 tax districts, and it's kind of interesting, flip this over here. Our district goes from down here in San Bernardino all the way up to the Oregon border. And you notice how much of this is red? That's our district. It's called District 2, and that's Senator Runner's district. And it's kind of interesting. He's our elected official. And when this bill came out, or this bill was passed, Senator Runner, of course, opposed it because he has been one of the higher rated members along from the Howard Jarvis people, because one, he feels it's illegal, but two, when the governor said, why are you doing this? You're collecting this money, BOE, and don't you know, it's not us who are assessing this bill, we've been deemed to collect it. But he said, you know what, I don't work for the BOE, I don't work for the Board of Equalization, I work for my constituents, the people who elect me, and my people don't want it. And so I am not going to support this. And so that's why he is supporting the Howard Jarvis people on this lawsuit. And in fact, when this came out, tongue-in-cheek, George said this, he says, you know, our next fee ought to be an inner city crime fee. And he said, we ought to go after those in the inner city because it costs us more jails, more prisons, more police, more services. Why don't we have an inner city crime fee instead of a rural, you know, fee for CAL FIRE? And of course, that didn't go over real well, as you can imagine, in LA and San Francisco and all those other fine places. So there are 4 board members. George is one, and then there are 2 actually conservative people on this board of equalization, and there are 2 liberals, and you can imagine where they come from, LA and San Francisco. And it's all predicated upon people. There are about 9 million people in each district, okay? And so that's, Senator Runner really is out there fighting for us. Well, a couple things about the bill that's happening right now. Senator Runner is also having, if you know people who want to have some interaction on this, the CAL FIRE fee, next Tuesday, he is having a town hall meeting by way of telephone. And you'll be able to ask some questions more about, you know, BOE's situation on this. And another interesting thing I just found out today is that the Board of Forestry, who were the ones who, as I think Jim mentioned, they're the ones who Governor Brown appointed some of his people to be on there and jacked this thing up to $150. They are going to be holding a board meeting next Wednesday, the 8th, and it's going to be online. So if you want to watch and see how our, you know, money is and how they're dealing with this, that is going to be next Wednesday. And if you want some more information about that, you can go to Senator Runner's website and you can get some more information on that. But this. As mentioned, the CAL FIRE fee now has been halted in terms of the BOE. The BOE is not sending out the billings for this year. And it's kind of interesting. A lot of people, I've been to a lot of town meetings like this in the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, however long it's been. And a lot of people didn't realize that the bill that we got back, the first billing, was for last year. 11-12. Now we were to get the bill for this year, 12-13. And so we're going to get billed again, supposedly, if it stays on track, next November for the following year. So we potentially could have gotten, with this delay, maybe a little bit longer, 3 billings for 115 or 150, depending on whatever you're in. We could have gotten within a month, 1 year to 14-month period. So, and it's a rip, because all it is doing is backfilling the budget that they moved money around. And so that is, it must have been, I won't say what Mike. So that has been the, the reason why. So we need to, as we encourage people to pay their bill. and then do a protest or a redetermination to that. But it's kind of interesting because in a hearing that was part of the Board of Equalization just a couple weeks ago, I think it's April 24th, when it comes to wrong billings, because we've had a number, how many have had a bad billing? Yeah, a number of you. Double billings, triple billings. I've been dealing a lot with that. In fact, I'm Janet over here. I'm going to be helping her tomorrow. She has gotten a notice that she owes, and yet she's paid her bill. And so we're going to take care of that. We're going to get that straightened out.
Bills for like $0?
Oh yeah, bills for $0? Sure, yeah, would that be nice? But if it, one of the things that has been determined, it says if you have a billing and it is incorrect, it is a wrong billing, it says if we know, this is from the BOE headquarters, if we know the billing that is illegally determined, the BOE has the power to cancel such an erroneous billing under the fee collection procedures law. If the fee payer has not paid, then it would be ended there. So if they know if that is an illegal fee, if it's illegal, or I'm sorry, if it's a wrong billing, according to this, you don't have to pay. If it's a correct billing, if like me, I paid my fee because I know I am in the SRA area, paid the bill. But if you know it's not, then he said, go ahead and not pay it. If they've not paid, then if they have paid and it's determined it's illegal, CAL FIRE has to refund it, which we don't know how long that'll be. So I just want to encourage you that the people up here are really fighting for making this something happen. And again, my son-in-law is a CAL FIRE firefighter, and he's against this fee because he said, Dad, it's not going to give us one more fireman, not one more fire truck, not one more hose, not one more helicopter, none of that. One of the young ladies and I agreed that if this money had gone to really helping, I could maybe be okay with it, but it's not. And so that is why, another reason for me personally, I put my protest in for paying the fee, but I owe the fee because I believe you render under Caesar that which is Caesar's. And like I say, I've only been in the BOE for a year and a half. I knew Doug from when I used to direct the rescue mission down in Reading for 8 years, and then I directed the Red Cross. Then I was a pastor for 30 years before that. And how you ever make it to Sacramento and work for the state, I never know. But it is the one reason I did is because Senator Runner, I believe in what he stands for, and that he really wants to fight for us. So thank you for having us. And Jim, where'd you go? He's outside doing a thing. So I think it's time for questions.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jim Dahl, and
Hey, in the back there's a lot of propaganda, information that you ought to pick up from all of us. And there's one pamphlet that says know your rights, and Senator Runner is very strong on taxpayer rights. And so, you can pick those up, and if you have a question and you're having problems, pick up my card and give me a call. My cell phone's on there, you can call me. I'm going to be dealing with Janet's issue tomorrow, and we're going to get that straightened out. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people who have a lot of issues, so we will get them straightened out if you'll get to me, okay?
thanks, Jim. So now, usually most people move closer to God before they get in their life here. That seems like going. I'm going to check with you on your salvation, sir. So Jim stepped outside to do a quick interview with Channel 12, and we'll be back in a minute. So why don't we go ahead and get started for people with questions and comments. Come up and grab this mic. Looks like Diane is down from Trinity County visiting here tonight. So
Yes. Good to see you. Thank you all for your service too, by the way. And so yes, I am from Trinity County, and we are. It's so refreshing to hear that you guys, even though we've been pushed over in the redistricting over to the coast. Anyway, you guys are working for what a small group of us in Trinity County are also working for.
We won't forget you. You're my adopted county in the assembly, and we'll just re-adopt you in the House.
Thank you. I'll tell them. Anyway, what I was wondering about, if any of you guys can address what Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Vilsack, has said recently concerning, well, we'll just not send out so many, put out so many fires this year because of the sequester. So, is there any information, new information on that? And, yeah, we've been up there in Trinity County talking to the U.S. Forest Service too. Just last week, they had a special meeting with them. And so they're looking better. So maybe it has to do with what you guys are doing. And we can really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. So you feel a little bit better about that most recent meeting with U.S. Forest Service, that they are going in the right direction, is that right?
Well, that much.
Yeah. It's incremental too. We've had some sit-down meetings there. You know, the locals, they want to be helpful and all that, and if I was walking in their shoes a little bit, they're a little hamstrung by every time they turn around. The environmental organization is suing them over not having extra I's dotted and T's crossed over a salvage. I mean, it's pathetic on federal land, especially the inability to access that. Now, you were talking about sequester as well. Now, boy, what an overused, tiresome word. You guys are all tired of fiscal cliff. Sequester is the new word that really has nothing to do with anything. I always thought that was for juries. But basically, that's code for automatic spending reduction, which is truly a reduction in the increase of spending. It's just reducing the rate of increase. About $85 billion is agreed upon in 2011 by the White House and through the Congress to have that as the last gasp. If they didn't get around to agreeing to utter reductions, this would be the last resort thing that everybody was sure they would never use, as seeing that reduction. So the sequester, we've been wrestling with that there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a lot of movement out of the White House, as we in the House were trying to alter, not the size of the reduction, but where it was affected. Heck, just Friday when we left town, we had at the last minute to do one affecting the FAA and airlines, so that people wouldn't have their summer travel ruined and business travel and all that by the furloughs that they're using. This is the hostage crisis. They're using this as an excuse to go after a lot of things, a lot of services you care about. So, can I tell you that the sun is rising on the thing and everything's going to be all better? I don't know, but at least the White House has had to do some backtracking on that, a little bit of embarrassment, using this as a wedge on that, you know, closing the White House for tours and things like that. And, you know, Congress has a piece of that too, so we have to figure out how to do it better, and we certainly can't have that affecting fire suppression over the year. So I don't know what the answer is right now, but as we
Keep an eye on them, please.
Yeah, and well, I know Paul Ryan, get to know Paul Ryan pretty well, and as we talk about this in the budget here, then we'll make sure that the basic cornerstone things of government is the public safety, and that's supposed to be one of them. So,
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very much.
Jim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Hello, I'm Linda Horton Lyons. Doug, you know my husband. Paul Lyons. Doug.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so he was a volunteer firefighter in Cottonwood for 12 years, so I should have a reduction, right? I have a fireman right at my house. But I thank you.
I have levies that are on my rice fields, I should get a FEMA reduction, right?
Yes, the vote. Yes, right. I have to clarify, I don't know if we filed the petition for redetermination, and how do you find out if you did? I know we paid the fee. I was recovering from a tumor a year ago, so I was kind of out of it. So I'm backtracking, seeing that if you didn't do it within 30 days, how do you find out if you did it.
I would defer that question to David and Jim
And I met Jarvis and Howard back in 1978. I don't look that old, but I was in real estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, and it's a big deal if you were in real estate. I mean, Prop 13
It was
has
big.
been a boon not only to homeowners but to real estate agents and keeping what's left of the housing market in this state continuing to function.
And we thank
So,
you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. I mean, you guys are the advocates that continue to make sure that that's in place, because there are 8 constitutional amendments this year seeking to water down various aspects of Prop 13. So they're taking their supermajority very seriously in the legislature. Whether those move forward in advance, who knows, but it's something that we're taking very seriously. So Prop 13 is the best thing since sliced bread, and all you guys benefit from it, and we're very thankful for all of you as well.
So how do I find out?
Yep. What I would suggest you do regarding the petition is call CAL FIRE. And I think there was a phone number on one of the frequently asked questions pages there in the back. I don't have it in any of my, actually I take that back, I do. It's the Fire Prevention Fee Service Center. You're probably going to be on hold for 20 minutes, but I think it's probably going to be the best way to answer that question.
Yeah. What's on Runners?
Yeah, it's actually 888-310-6447. Sorry.
Okay, 888.
Oh, yeah, 888. Oh, there we
I got
go.
one.
Got the form, good.
I thank you again.
Right. So yeah, so there's, I would just call regarding that, and if you didn't fill it out within 30 days, if there is another mailing, and this is one of the things I wanted to mention in call-ups, if there is another mailing, definitely go ahead and fill it out again.
Okay.
We are seeking in the lawsuit to strike the entire statute, so it'll be like the bill never existed. If that's the case, you should be able to get your money back, whether you filled out a petition or not, but just to be safe.
Yeah.
Definitely fill that out if there's another billing.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And folks, we've got to be in the long haul on this one, and by the way, our cards are back there, and my office directly can help you with this. But this is going to be a long battle here. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Anthony Carpio. I live south of Paradise off of Hill Road, just outside of town. And what can we do besides file the petition for redetermination and get involved with these people here to help out?
Well, I was going to kind of close with that, but this is as good a point as any. That you should go out of here with some kind of hope, all right? That the fight can continue. I've offered pessimism about these series of bills. That even any that move along will be killed in the dark of night. And I don't even think the Chesbrough bill that substitutes one tax for another is going to be enough. And I'll tell you why. The majority of those members do not want to broaden that tax. They want to leave it on you, okay? That's just the way it's going to be. But we cannot give up. So what do? You have people that you know all over the state of California. Communicate with them how bad this is. Ask them if it is going to affect them. Did they get their fire fee? And then ask them to go in and meet with their legislators too. And then I'm going to have some help down there. And as I've told you, there have been some very liberal members that had constituencies that didn't like it. And even a couple of them voted with me on a couple of the times on the bill to repeal. So rally it around this. Talk to everybody you can talk to. Write in letters to the editor. There's got to be a groundswell from the people. I was around then too in 1978. I was a young farmer campaigning for the state senate for the first time, and was one of the original Prop 13 babies. And that effected a long-term change in government that persists to the day, and that's why this attack on it is all the greater today. They can't stand it, some of them. But here is another specific example of the absolute insatiable appetite of your government for more of your money to provide things that don't benefit you at all. We've got to fight back, and that's the way. More communication. Don't go to sleep. Don't leave here tonight and forget it. Wake up in the morning thinking about it and communicate, communicate, communicate. And work with me. You're going to hear me. I'm on the news almost every day on this and other matters. We will work with you. Next question.
Okay, my name is Bob Sainer. I've owned property in Magalia since 1965, and and I currently live here in Magalia, DeSabla area for the last 16 years, and I spent 37 years in the fire service. I have an understanding of a lot of things that's been said here. One of the questions I have, a lot of them have been kind of answered while I stood in line, but one, isn't there some kind of injunction that could be done to block them collecting this fee until the lawsuit is finished?
Well, I think David could give you a better answer than that, but I don't think they can go in, they couldn't even file any action until there was in fact a class formed and the action had been taken by the board. And I don't know that we can get an injunction on it, can we?
I mean, the short answer is the way the law is structured, we did look at the prospect of injuncting this in order to not collect the revenue, and it's not possible to do. So.
Okay, and then,
And I think for that reason I said, they didn't have it, no one was agreed yet. Go ahead.
yeah, and then, of course, part of it's been answered, but when I received it, I have 5 pieces of property, so I got hit 5 times. And of course, the wording was if the world will come to an end for you if you don't pay this fee, you're going to be fined, and just, that was brought up. And so another question, I think you kind of answered it. When you win, will we get our money back with the interest they threatened us to have?
Good, I was going to answer
We would only hope, sir. Boy, we'd get that old government, wouldn't it?
I think it's only fair, because that's how, I mean, I paid the fee because, they scared me with that. And the way it was worded, you couldn't, I didn't have time to file a appeal or whatever they called it. But what I did do is on every single check that I wrote to them, and I wrote each check individually for all 5 properties, I put on there that this is an illegal tax. I asked why, if this is a fee, the franchise tax board is collecting the money. And a couple other things, and that was nice, but what it did do, it triggered them to automatically send me as appeal. And then, of course, then I get a letter back from Cal Fire and said, well, your appeal failed. And I didn't really file appeal, I just wrote on that check, this is an illegal fee, I'm paying in protest, and it's a tax, not a fee.
Well, sir, they cannot wait to deny those appeals. I mean, you get fast action on the denial of appeal. Getting one granted takes a little bit more time, to say the least, right?
Okay, and most of the other questions were answered, and some other subjects were covered. I'm not going to cover that tonight. My main purpose to be here is I want to support our Jarvis Taxpayers Association. They're doing a wonderful job. And I want to see this thing repealed, and I want my interest paid back.
So I don't know about the interest, but if you work with Jarvis Organization, if you work with me passing the ammo and helping us get votes in Sacramento, there is hope someday. The government is going to cling to that last dollar. You bet. Another question, sir, in the back.
My name is David Stock. I had a couple of questions. We got our bill, and they were talking about, I heard, 30 days. Well, when we got our bill, it said 10 days. And I'm like, 10 days? I mean, I've been out of work. So my wife's like kind of supporting the family. I'm like, 10 days, what's 10 days? So then it ended up being about 30 days, and so we paid it, it's like we need to pay it. So we paid it, and then I get 2 days later in the mail, I got another thing that says, back fees, you owe $12 or something. So we paid that. Now I got another one for another $12, and I'm like, it can't be $12 interest on $12. So, and I have another one here.
Get that information, and we'll take care of that.
And if somebody was asking about numbers, I have a number here on the bottom of the letter. It even has a woman's name on it. But I had another question too.
Sir, wait, on that point, get a hold of the Center, Board of Equalization.
Talk to me and I'll get all your information, all the APN number and all that, and we'll get it straightened out tomorrow.
Okay, and there was, I worked at Discount Market down there, right by the Magalia substation, and the fire department down there, I don't know what it was, but sometimes they were open here, and they were closed there, or they were closed
Well,
here.
that's a distant, that's far removed from what we're talking about here, sir. We're just talking about that tax itself, not the opening, the closing of the stations. Is that what you're saying?
Right, but if we're
But let's
doing this-
keep it to the point here.
Well, no, the point being was that we've got two stations up here, and there was a vicious car accident right by my work, and I ran to that fire station, and they're closed, and someone had to come from all the way up here. I'm wondering, is it still like that?
I don't have the answer to that question. You're gonna have to ask somebody here in the local department, sir.
I can look into that
I just
for
think
you.
that-
I have my card in back, or if you come up and see me, I'll write down your name and number and get back to you with that answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, we got a couple more here.
My name is John Stonebreaker, and I live right here in DeSabla, and I wanted to ask if the money for the fire tax is being used to backfill old budgets, is there any revenue source that you would support, since you don't like the Chesborough bill and you don't like AB 1500, which you voted against last year?
Sir, my position is very clear. We do not fix California's budget by raising taxes. All that has happened by the taxes that have been thus far raised is a broken budget has been funded. The answer to better government is not more money. It's better government. Thank you. Next question.
Just a quick reminder, the voters just added via Prop 30 due to Jerry, sending his little dog around doing the dog and pony show during the election, a 0.5% sale. How much sales tax? 0.25% sales tax and a tax on the upper income. So they've already gotten in an influx of approximately, was it 6 billion?
45 billion.
45 over the timeline. So there's already more money coming in. Now, the voters have rejected every other tax for the last some years before that. There's a parks fee and all these other things that they've been rejecting. So they finally got talked into that one. So there's supposed to be plenty of money to fix everything out there. So.
Not much is fixed, folks, in these tough years. The greatest opportunity in history to get our budget under control, prudently fixed and prioritized, that has not happened. A broken budget has been funded, not fixed. Supervisor Gallagher. Oh, did you have another question, ma'am? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
My name's Diane Kahn.
I'm sorry.
And I own the property up here, but after my husband passed away, I wasn't able to keep it up myself. But I was very fortunate, by the good Lord, to find some renters who want to buy it with a lease option and within the next 3 years. Well, I got my notice a year and a half ago, and I called the number, and they were very, very rude on the phone, and the lady said, you either pay it within 2 weeks or we're slapping a lien against your property. And I said, I don't have that kind of money. I'm on just Social Security right now. And my question is, does Caesar accept monopoly money? I don't know where else to get it, and it's a real burden. And so many people up here are retirees and are on fixed incomes. And they're stealing from the elderly. And I think they're the crooks, and I think they should be held accountable to the full extent. And but anyway, I don't know if I get another bill this year. I can't pay it. There's just no money. And so anyway.
It is a dilemma that a lot of people are focused on, ma'am, and it's one of the points that we make.
And they just keep taking
This
more
fee
and
does
more.
not need to be applied to you. That would have been one bit of burden off of you, okay? But when you have rude people that you deal with in government, get a hold of my office, Board of Equalization, Senator Runner's office. If that person was in the board, they can maybe find some remedy to help you. We can help you as well.
This is going to foul up the people that are in my house. Probably, if this keeps going, they won't buy it. And that leaves me stuck, and it'll probably end up in foreclosure. lose everything, so.
I understand your dilemma, and that's why a lot of folks are very desperate. That's why a lot of folks many years ago voted and came to bat for Proposition 13.
And it's not for myself, it is for all the retirees up here that are on fixed incomes.
You bet. And there's a lot of them up here, right?
And that 1.2% wasn't a very good shot in the arm.
Senator Runner, I would want you to apologize. One, if it was a BOE employee, it might have been, or it might have been CAL FIRE, you know, because I've had both folks, but we're sorry that that happened.
Well, I paid the 115, and that was all my grocery money for the month.
Yeah, and you can find it, you know, they will take partial payments, you know.
Well, she didn't say that, she
yeah.
just said
Well,
you've
they
got 2 weeks
will,
or we're
you know.
slapping a lien against your property.
Yeah, they will take partial payments, and of course, they'll charge you interest, I'm sure, for
Oh,
whatever
I'm
the
sure
balance is,
they will.
you know.
Yeah.
But, that, you know, but hopefully, the Howard Jarvis folks are gonna get this, you know, overturned for us, and get it, you know, get us on the right course,
And
and
you have
so.
to dig into my monopoly money.
Yeah, I hear you, thank you.
Ma'am, would you state your name again, please? I mean, so we,
Yes, Diane Conn.
Diane Kahn, thank you, okay. All right, well, there's nothing funny about this.
No, it isn't.
It's offensive to us as your representatives that they're chiseling this out of a lot of people. We know what the demographics are up here. There's a lot of people on fixed income that are retired, and
Neighbor's
$115.
90 years old, got
Yeah.
the same notice and was treated very rudely also.
Yeah, there's no excuse for that, because government is there to serve you, and it's supposed to
Well, I
be,
thought they worked for us.
well, we do, and we work every day to try and make sure, because when you walk up to that window, they're supposed to greet you, how do we help you? And they're supposed to give you, the first answer is supposed to be getting you on your way, so you're not like, oh, you're bugging me on my break.
Yeah. well,
That's offensive
that was
to
the
all of us
attitude.
here. And so, and we get that. $115 is, as Jim mentioned there, that if that happens 3 times in perhaps a 14, 15-month period, that's a big
But it's,
whammy on people around here.
it's also got my house up here kind of hanging in limbo because I don't know whether the people are gonna go ahead with the option to buy it now because they know that they're gonna have to take over after it sells.
I would hope have 115 per year until we kill this thing, because the deal breaker on a home whose value
They're a
is.
young couple with
Whatever it
small
is.
children, and, you
Yeah.
know, they're struggling too, so.
That said, it's our job to try and extinguish this problem here. You know, I'm at the federal level, I have to defer back to Jim and Jim Dawes.
Yeah, I do appreciate everything.
But we hear you, and we are here for you, and we
Speaking
get.
for a lot of people on Social Security.
Well, you know, folks, don't feel bad. Those bureaucrats are rude with us, too. But they do hear back from us very loudly. We have our supervisor, James Gallagher's come up here to be with us tonight, folks.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment and a question. You know, first of all, I hail from Sutter County, and we don't have SRAs down there, but my neighbors just to the east in Placer County do, and so we're watching very closely this new legislation where they're trying to expand those zones. I'm wondering, Doug, if they're going to start saying that rice fields are a danger or a threat, now that we can't burn anymore, of course, because of state regulations, whether those are a threat. They're going to somehow bring us into these
Rice fields have had their day on a lot of different things too. Actually, now we're becoming most favored status here because anybody travels down 99 towards Sacramento, where they're doing that interchange on, was it Alberta Road? They're building all that big overcrossing.
Yeah.
They had to, get this, they had to mitigate for the acres of rice ground they covered up because now they're seeing it as habitats. So you're paying tax dollars to mitigate, not just buying the land, which is proper for eminent domain, but you have to mitigate for those acres because those are now seen as habitats. So that's just another weird thing to throw in the pot there on what's going on with rice. So maybe that's good for me, I don't know.
Well, and I had the opportunity to meet with Supervisor Teeter a couple weeks ago, and as you can tell, he's very thoughtful about these issues, and he was telling me about the issue that you guys are facing up here, and it was kind of like deja vu because I've been living in FEMA land for the past 5 years since I've been on the Board of Supervisors, and basically, if you take that map up there and just do the inverse, that's what we're looking at. We're getting mapped into the FEMA floodplain, and we're being told, and it, you know, in some cases, I have people paying over $2,000 a year on fixed incomes, having to pay this mandatory flood insurance. And the inequality is something we see as well, Doug. You know, in my area, I have people on fixed incomes in rural areas that are paying, you know, this over $2,000 flood insurance. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, which is at the bottom of the barrel, no mandatory flood insurance. They're paying nothing. What's the difference in risk? You know, it's not that much of a difference in risk. So, you know, it really seems like there is almost an attack, whether it's intentional or not, on rural America. And we really got to fight these things that are, you know, imposing additional taxes and onerous burdens on us. I think this exchange of ideas is a very good one. And if we can find ways to reduce the insurance, to fight this fee. One question I had for you, Dave, was I know back in 2000, DWR tried to impose that water user fee on all water users, and I think that was successfully defeated. Is there any precedent that we can maybe use on that with regard to this fire tax?
James, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I mean, there may be precedent within Proposition 26 or Prop 218, you know, that might be used to beat back some of those, you know, rate charges, or at least have them stand a better chance at going up against a vote of the people. But I mean, there's definitely precedent-setting law, I think, that can be used in these situations.
Thank you guys for coming up and all that you're doing.
If I may indulge, Supervisor, I'd love to talk with you in the future on your issues and, you know, keep sharing, and that way we can write mutual letters of support for each of our issues. Thanks.
Yeah. Let me just, and ma'am, we'll be right there. Let me just make some closing comments here, just on a couple of things that I've just been hearing over the course of the Q&A. First of all, it is true, there have been bills mailed out for $0. That was not a joke which you heard earlier. That has actually occurred on more than one occasion. So that just tells you some of the administrative nightmare that this fire tax has become for both the Board of Equalization and CAL FIRE. I ran into one individual at one of these town hall meetings that received 9 different mailings, not bills, but just mailings pertaining to the fire tax from both BOE and CAL FIRE. So clearly this is not being administered very well. Sir, in response to the earlier question about interest, you will receive interest if this is refunded, but the current state interest rate right now is about 1%. So, right, no, seriously, definitely don't spend it on one spot. It won't be a lot. And let me just speak really briefly about the petition for redetermination if it is denied. If your petition is denied, as most of them have been, that does not mean you did something wrong. All that denial means is that CAL FIRE or the BOE does not have the legal expertise to pass judgment on whether or not this tax is unconstitutional. That is why we filed a lawsuit in the court. So that, in essence, is why they're denying your petition. But again, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. So just want to throw that out there by way of clarification.
I have another question. Then we'll probably have to wrap up. Please.
Questions, comments, both. First of all, I'd like to thank Congressman LaMalfa for encouraging the opening of land use and continuing land use for recreation, hunting, and everything else on Forest Service and BLM lands. We need more of it. We've been shut out with gates and everything for way too long. The second thing with regard to this fire fee, I'm sorry, but can I opt out, please? In 2008, after the fires of 2008, and what CAL FIRE did to our property and our neighboring property and the access road in, excuse me, they left essentially punji sticks on the upside of the road, so anything coming down the hill could get hurt there between 2 and 3 feet, slant slant cut with a chainsaw, and they threw big trees down in the ravine beside the road going into the property. What that does is it creates a fire hazard for the next time. There is no way that we have the means to mitigate that. No one I know of, except maybe CAL FIRE, has equipment heavy enough to pull those trees up. So those are there as tender for the next time. And then what we heard was they were essentially going to use our property and our neighbor's property kind of as a fire break to save the rest of Magalia. Exactly what am I getting out of that fire tax? Oh, whatever they choose to call it that is unjustly imposed. And could somebody please tell me how it's different from extortion?
Well, it's a good rhetorical question, ma'am, and maybe a difference without a distinction. We all feel, or a lot of people feel aggrieved by their government, okay? I can certainly tell you the folks standing up here do. I came off the farm many years ago, and so did Dr. Mallett, because of that very point. We decided we needed to fight back. All the folks that supported Proposition 13 decades ago felt they needed to fight back. It's no different today. We need to fight back. Let me give you an example of this tax. It's right out of a dialogue I had in that committee, in the Budget Committee, a week ago, talking with the CAL FIRE folks. And I asked, we must also address the question, I'm asking Judge Tosny, Legislative Counsel, about the legality. Is there in fact a benefit to the payer, meaning to you? Yes, we would agree that there has to be a specific benefit to the payer. This is the Legislative Council, state legislature. I'm going to make this very brief. There must be a distinguishable benefit to that group of fee payers, distinguishable from the general benefit to the public. Then he goes in to define prevention. He concluded in his testimony to me, so therefore, it is our opinion that using SRA fee money to pay the civil cost recovery would violate the trust imposed on that fee money and is therefore unconstitutional. That's pretty heavy language. And boy, did some people in that committee and in the administration have a difficult moment when that was recorded on testimony, and that's why I got this transcribed. Now, we do have to leave. Some of us will stick around a while to visit with you. Doug, would you want any closing remarks?
I really don't have a whole lot more other than what's been said here. So I just appreciate that you came forward here, and we need your stories. We need what you've actually lived, because this is what needs to be heard in committee in Sacramento, like say when the Chesbrough bill comes up, like Mrs. Khan. I don't know, did she get away from us here? But these are the types of we need to hear from very real people with very real struggles on this. See, this is what you're imposing on the people that supposedly government claims it's trying to help with health plans or this or the other. This is hurting people. They can't afford it. And so please feel part of the dialogue. Whether you're writing those letters to the editor, you're writing on blogs, or getting online, or you're coming to Sacramento, or even occasionally, if we have to, hopefully you don't have to come to Washington, D.C., because the fight right now here is in Sacramento. And so think about mounting up and being part of that down there, because those committee people have to look you in the eye and hear your story before they vote aye for another one of these things. At least make them do that, because if we're active together on it, at some point maybe a conscience will take over. So God bless you all. Hang in there. We're going to do the best we can.
I'd like to close. I've told you about ISO and how it's affected our ratings and our insurance. So you're getting hit by this fire tax, and you're also going to get a raise in insurance likely. And those stories is what my office would like to hear. So feel free to bring them in if you could. And then I'm going to push on your behalves to improve our rating and our CAL FIRE department So we don't have stations not counted anymore, because, yeah, it's just nuts. So again, thank you very much for coming.
And I know Senator Runner would want, if there's an issue, come see me. There are my cards in the back, call me, and we want to be of help. And I know that you hate hearing that thing, we're here from the government, we want to help you. Senator Runner really does, so thank you.
And guys, just one more thing. FireTaxProtest.org, again, our website to get more information on the fire tax. And also our main website is, of course, hjta.org. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Gallagher, thank you for coming up here and being with us tonight and helping us in the good fight. Ladies and gentlemen, some folks now believe that the preamble to the Constitution is to be changed. They think it needs to now not read, "We the people," but "We the government." Let's take it back. Let's work together. That's what we're here for tonight. Thanks for coming.